Welcome to the Life in the Red podcast presented by the Lincoln Journal-Star, your source for Husker news, analysis, and more. From football in the fall to recruiting in the summer, we've got you covered. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Basnett, Parker Gabriel, and Stephen M. Sipple.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome in, Life in the Red podcast. I'm Chris. There's Parker. There's Steve. It is 4:45 p.m. here on Wednesday, September 22nd. We're a few days out from Nebraska traveling to Michigan State for a rather large football game. We're going to talk plenty about that. We're going to talk a little hoops. The basketball team, the men's basketball team had their photo day today, their annual photo day. So we'll touch on that a little bit, but we're mostly going to stick to football for obvious reasons. Nebraska coming off the 23-16 loss to number 3 Oklahoma, now heading north to East Lansing to face Mel Tucker's 3-0 Michigan State Spartans, coming off a 38-17 win at previously ranked Miami. Sparty's rolling in Tucker's second year, really year one, if you consider last year 0, considering all the stuff that went on with that. But yeah, they're rolling. It's the start of a what you would call, I guess, intriguing stretch for the football team over these next several weeks. You have Michigan State, of course, this Saturday, then Northwestern Michigan at home, then at Minnesota, October 16th, before you get to your first bye week of the year. So we're going to start there. Let's set up this Michigan State game. I'll turn it over to you guys. What are your thoughts as we kind of start to really hone in on the Spartans and what we might see Saturday?
Well, I mean, first of all, you're going to Michigan State with a good Nebraska team that may have its full complement of receivers and tight ends. So you would add Oliver Martin to Omar Manning, Xavier Betts, Samari Toure, the 2 tight ends. That'll look good. I mean, you're going there without Gabe Irvin, but you're going there with almost a full complement of running backs. But you're also going there without an offensive line. Well, you're going with an offensive line, but
they do have. They have one. Yes, that was
a little Freudian, wasn't it?
That was a little Freudian.
Yeah, they are. They're going with some struggling tackles. I saw some Pro Football Focus numbers today that I won't even repeat out loud. They're so bad.
Not safe for work.
Yeah. I think I'll for the sake of those 2 kids, I'll just not go there. But they're really struggling up front, and the kickers. We'll see how that all looks. But I think we're going to watch a close game, is what I think.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, as you said, it's an intriguing stretch of 4 games. It's a critical stretch of 4 games, and it feels like we're going to have to probably talk more about this, but it really is the start of a critical run here. Michigan State, Northwestern, Michigan, Minnesota before the bye week. So the challenge is in not having any letdown after what felt like a big game last week against Oklahoma. It feels like a big game again this week. And then in also not trying to win all 4 of these games at the same time, which I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue for Nebraska. They know they've got their hands full with the Spartans. You don't have to watch Michigan State or Kenneth Walker, for that matter, the running back, for long to understand that you're not going to, waltz up there and take an easy game from a team that's rebuilding under a second-year head coach. I mean, they're playing well. They've got a bunch of transfers that are making an impact early on, including Walker, Quavarius Crouch, the linebacker transfer from Tennessee, and a bunch of other guys. So it's, Adrian Martinez said on Monday, it's a need game. And he said, but every game for us is a need game at this point. So I find Nebraska to be in a very interesting situation where they haven't proven a lot so far this year. They're 2-2 after 4 games. A near upset of a really good team and a bad loss to a bad team on its record. And everything that Nebraska wants to accomplish this year is still out there for it. But they're going to have to sort of take it, a week at a time to try to make up that ground beginning this weekend.
You said it, Parker. It's like the classic 1 game at a time situation, right? Like they can't, You can't look ahead to those 2 home games coming up. You can't look ahead to the road trip to Minnesota. Like it's got to be Michigan State this weekend, and it's got to be Michigan State. Not we almost got Oklahoma. Now we're going to Michigan State. Like you can't let Oklahoma linger, the way you lost that game, even though you played fairly well and for large swaths of that game. You can't let it linger. You can't let one loss turn into 2 losses, as the old cliche goes. So yeah, you're right. I feel like we say this every week with this program, but it's super interesting. Like Nebraska can win this game. There's no question about that. I don't think we're really going out on a limb by saying that, but they've got to have the focus in the right spot. They've got to have the I's dotted, the T's crossed, all those sorts of things, because we've seen it before out of this team. They'll play well or they'll play okay, then the next week it's a disaster, or vice versa. So.
All right, let's face it. I mean, let's just be real. If they go 0-2, if they fall to 0-2 in the Big Ten, they're out of the West race pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why. I mean, that's part of the reason it's big. I mean, you're out of the West race pretty much at 0-2. And then interest wanes a little bit. I mean, the fan base interest wanes. Hey, Parker, could you quick do your imitation? Parker does a
mango
really good
smoothie coming up.
Just one little mango smoothie coming. Table 4.
I just reiterate. I think they'd be about out of it. Now, you worry about the fan base interest waning and the vibe becoming overly negative, fans. But also, if I'm the head coach, I don't know if coaches think this way. I would. I'd be a little worried about my guys if you're out of the West Division race. I mean, I would. I mean, this just makes it harder to motivate. So I think it's a gigantic game. I think the program needs – I don't know. You guys should help the old man here. I think they haven't beaten a ranked team since 2015 when they beat Michigan State. Now, by my compilation, that's 14 straight losses to ranked teams. Does that sound right, guys?
Sounds about right. Yeah,
certainly sounds plausible.
Okay, and I think that loss to Oklahoma made them. I'm going to say 5-13 in games decided by 7 or fewer. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
So this game's going to be close. They need to turn those things around, and it would be. There would be. I think it would be a shot of momentum for the fan base, and more importantly, a shot of momentum for the program. A big shot, by the way, a big shot in advance of a critical stretch.
Yeah, it's interesting because it would. I think I totally agree with you, Sipple, that it would be. And then on the flip side of that, like if you lose this game, it's hard to know what to expect. Not only for the last 3 there before the bye week, but it also like if you were looking at Nebraska and they had a loss to Illinois and they had a loss to Michigan State and you're 0-2 in the Big Ten. Now we think about Michigan State maybe a little differently now than we would have 2 months ago. But it gets harder and harder to piece together 6 wins on the schedule, right? I mean, it gets harder to find. They're going to be in a lot of close games probably, but you drop another game that's close, or conversely, you get blown out, and you start looking at the schedule and saying, how's this team going to get to a bowl game in year 4 of Scott Frost? And that would be not the immediate concern, but that would certainly, I think that would start to enter the equation too, let alone, competing for the West.
Which is why I know there's a lot of cynicism attached to this discussion, but it's why I believe you could make a real strong argument this is the biggest game of Frost's tenure. Now, I know what you're going to say until, I don't know, I don't think you'd say next week, but maybe Michigan, then you'd say it. I don't know. But this is, the biggest to this point. I think if they keep playing well, there's going to be bigger games than this.
Sure.
But if they lose it, it feels as big as any game that Nebraska's had in Frost's first 3+ years. But they all.
That's called a segue. We're going to go into the hot topic right now, and that's the question: is this the biggest game of Scott Frost's tenure? Sipple already kind of stated his case a little bit. Parker, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say,
yes.
well,
Go
Sipple,
ahead.
yeah, you said you can make a strong case, so make it to lead us off here.
Well, I just would cover what we said. I mean, if you lose, you're out of the West race. On the other hand, if you win, you got a shot then you got Northwestern coming into your home turf with a chance to go 2-1 in the Big Ten and put yourself squarely in the race. Put yourself squarely, I mean, not squarely in a bowl conversation, but really enhance your bowl chances, which is critical. I mean, it's one of the things fans are looking for this year at a minimum, but is make a bowl game. I think it's important for the players after all these near misses. You heard Deontay Williams, you heard Garrett Nelson talk about how sick they are of coming close. They're tired of it. So a win is affirmation for the players that all this hard work is paying off. A loss is just one more bit of frustration, and you wonder at what point that frustration begins to affect preparation, affect mindset. These guys I think this program needs a win badly. A win like this, not a win against Buffalo, not a win against Florida, a win against a top 20 program, top 25 program. It's hard for me to find it would have been hard for me to find a bigger win. I guess people were talking about Illinois that way this year. And I think that loss in a way enhances the need for them to win this game.
Yeah, I think you're right, Sipple, about losing to Illinois, making this game all the more critical. I think I'll say that it is, although I've got a couple other contenders for what could have been. I distinctly remember sitting in the press box the last time Scott Frost and Mel Tucker coached against each other in Boulder in 2019. Right. And when Nebraska was leading that game 17-0 at halftime and dominating, and Adrian Martinez was 9 of 9 for 180 and 2 touchdowns, I remember looking around and going, this is pretty wild. Like, they're dominating. The stadium is 60% Nebraska fans, and they're going to be ranked in the top 15 next week. I don't know if they're that good, but they're going to be. And at that point, that felt like the tide could have turned that day, and instead it didn't. Obviously, Colorado came back and won that game. And so it just goes on the heap of close losses. And then I think you could make a similar argument about that 2018 game in Columbus, where they almost knocked off Ohio State, had a chance to win in the second half, and didn't get it done. So that's sort of, to me, like it's the most important game because it's the next chance to find that jumping off point that they've been really convinced is just over the horizon. They haven't found it yet, and they haven't done it yet, and they haven't, notched that win that's going to send them off on this run yet. Those are the best two examples I can think of other games where you felt like that could happen. But certainly, this has the potential to either be that sort of turning point or just another on the pile of that could have been a big moment.
You guys have, I agree with what you're saying. You've also kind of made my argument for me, and that is how many times are we going to say this is the biggest game of Scott Frost's tenure this year? Whether it's been this year, last year, whenever it was. If they win this one, then does Northwestern become the biggest game because it's the next one after this one? Or does Michigan become the biggest game? Or does Minnesota become the biggest game? Is every single one of these games from here on out going to be the biggest game of Scott Frost's tenure based on the previous result, the results the previous week, previous couple of weeks, whatever it may be? I don't know. I mean, it's absolutely an enormous game. I don't disagree with that, but man, it's exhausting for me to talk about it. I can't imagine what it feels like for Scott Frost, and that coaching staff and those players. Like it's like what we've talked about before, where like every single week is a referendum on this team, on this coaching staff. That's what it is. And whether that's fair or not, that's what it is. And so is it the biggest game of Scott Frost's tenure? Very well might be, but it probably isn't going to be the last time we say that this year, depending on what happens Saturday and what happens down the road.
Yeah. All I'm talking about is to this point.
Yeah.
I mean, we could be having it again. I don't think we'd be having it again next week if they lose. If they win, I don't even know if we would, but yeah, we would have it again for sure. I mean, what you hope is, if you're a Nebraska fan, is that we have it about 4 more times this year. Because that would just say it means they're building. I would not have, I would agree with Parker on Colorado. That would have been a big one. Ohio State obviously would have been a big one, but they had already lost 6 games that year. So I'm not sure that would have swung too much. I mean, obviously winning at Ohio State's always big, but this one would just the fact that they're out of the race in week, in their second Big Ten game, basically that's just because it's year 4, as opposed to year 2,
It would just, it would set up such an interesting challenge if they do beat Michigan State, though, right? Because it would feel, in a way, it's different than beating Penn State at home last year, but it would feel similar in a way, which is then you'd be coming back home to play Northwestern. You'd probably be a solid favorite over Northwestern at 3-2, and then you'd have a chance to sort of conquer that demon that you couldn't last year. Handle the success, beat a team you're supposed to beat, get to 4-2, and then have Michigan come to town. I mean, it's still like, for as much up and down as there's been early in the year, you can see the path to a productive season for Nebraska. And you can see the path to a productive 4 weeks here before the bye week, but you can't see it as nearly as clearly, if at all, if they lose in East Lansing. Which is part of the reason why it feels like such a big game.
Yeah, thank you. All right, that's good. Good job.
Nighttime in East Lansing, where big games happen on a yearly basis.
Woodshed. It's going to be
How about the woodshed? How about the woodshed?
I'm bringing an axe, and I got my suspenders and a flannel, and I'm going to the woodshed.
You got the beard and the flannel already.
Yeah, you look like a lumberjack already. I mean,
you're an axe man. You're a bit of an axe man.
I think that's going to be my scene column. Can I use that woodshed stuff for my scene column, Baz? Does that make sense?
The scene column is not my intellectual property, so you're more than welcome to use the woodshed if you would like.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You should call him and ask him for like a line edit on the scene column.
Yeah.
He loves doing it anyways, so.
Yep.
You should find an actual woodshed somewhere near East Lansing and do the scene column from an actual woodshed in the wilderness of central Michigan.
That's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea.
Well, someone's gonna call the police on us. Like, we're gonna be wandering around Lansing on Saturday afternoon, snooping in people's backyards looking for a woodshed.
Yeah. No,
a woodshed.
I guess you would have to probably go into somebody's property for that.
Sipple's going to get killed with somebody with an axe because we're looking for a woodshed and somebody chopping wood.
I'm 55 and I've lived a great life. If that's the way
you had a good run. We've talked about it all the time. You've had a good run.
Yeah,
so
it's been a real good run. Wild.
It's been a really enjoyable for me too. I just want to tell you.
Well, thank you. All right, what else is on your minds?
Well,
what should be on our minds?
Should we taco you a little bit? Just kind of recap the trip.
Yeah.
Got good. Yeah, good to see our old friends down in Big 8 country, Big 12 country. That was a fun trip for me. I'd never been there before. Parker never been to the state of Oklahoma before. So, I thought it was super cool just being in that stadium, seeing those teams. There was the nostalgia part of it with the 50th anniversary of the game of the century, which, by the way, was a little weird, I thought, and how they built all that up. And then they, at halftime, their big reveal for honoring this was to have some guys line up on the goal line and talk about them for 30 seconds. And they just
for 1 minute
off the field. Yeah. And then they just kind of walked off the field. So it was a little weird in my book, but anyway, great atmosphere. Great scene. Love the campus, love the stadium. I think the south end zone at Oklahoma's Memorial Field is something Nebraska could strive for at its own Memorial Stadium. That's a whole other topic. But it was just cool to be in that and to see it up close, being down on the field, on the grass. We talked to Dom Raiola a little bit before the game. We saw the kind of the throwback uniform touches up close. It's cool to see that stuff and cool to see a little picture from the past, I guess.
Can I challenge you guys as journalists real quick?
Please.
I challenge you. I've had trouble with this week when people ask me what it was like. But we were walking up to the stadium and I kept saying, man, it was so intense. Walking up to to Gaylord Family Memorial Stadium at 8 a.m. What was so intense about it? How would you describe it?
That's a great question. I had that feeling too, Sip. I know exactly what you're saying. It just, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. It felt different. It felt different than driving to MSU, you know?
Everywhere you go feels a little bit different. Like when we got to Illinois, you know, it's sort of parking lots out around the stadium, and you walk through, and there's some people around. You know, there's a couple tailgates, not a couple. There's tailgates, and then there's guys selling tickets, and then Illinois has got that area off the south end of the stadium that's like the sort of official pregame area.
The Grange Grove.
Yeah, that's right. And then in Madison, there's a couple streets worth of house parties going on before games and all that. I thought the cool thing about Oklahoma was that from the moment we got out of the car, and we were 10-minute walk from the stadium, it was packed with tailgaters all the way up to the stadium, and they were already rolling. You know, it was, I don't know, 8 o'clock or 3 hours before kickoff.
Yeah. And
everybody was already rolling. And then on top of that, they had the big noon kickoff set up. And as we were walking around the stadium to shoot our little video and then go in, they were introducing Bob Stoops on the big noon kickoff as that was about to get going. And that part of the crowd was revved up, and there's music, and you could hear the band and all that. So it was just
the band music was, I mean, the boys in the band were striking it up early, which I think that, and the ladies, women, that was part of it. I don't know. I guess maybe the best way to explain is if Nebraska were ranked third in the country and had made 4 college football playoff appearances in the last 6 years, it probably feels something like that. You know, it'd be bizarre. It would feel like it did in the 90s. I hate to say that, but so yeah, I was really taken by the scene. And the last thing is that they pack a lot of people on the sideline the pregame.
Yeah.
For such a little area. You know, there's just that little. It's one of the smallest sideline areas you'll see.
You're cooped up down there?
A little cooped up, yeah, but it's cool. I mean, Baz, I don't even know if you noticed when we were standing, I think you were talking to Dom. Literally, Lincoln Riley had to move me to get on the field. Like he practically ran into me and then kind of said, "Excuse me," and he kind of pushed me aside.
You had to scheme something up to get by you?
Yeah, it was kind of funny in a way. I was like, "Oh, that was Lincoln Riley. Sorry."
Oh, hello.
Hello, Lincoln.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry.
It's funny. Like, think about the last 3 years, but the last 2 seasons with fans that we've had this year in 2019. And think about our 2 probably favorite road trips: Oklahoma, Colorado. You know,
God, good point, Baz.
You know, and it's just it felt different at both of those. Colorado for different reasons. There's a ton of Nebraska fans there, and there's a real hatred between those fan bases.
There is.
But it's just so different than going to Purdue, going to Michigan State, going to Ohio State, you know, or whatever, Rutgers, whatever you want to say. It's just it's different. There's history,
yeah.
And it's a little different feeling and a little different kind of, I guess, anxiousness or nervousness, with excitement, whatever you want to call it, going into those games. At least for us old guys.
Yeah, I think the history explains a lot of it.
Yeah. So, okay, this is going to sound kind of funny to say because of the way the game actually started, with Oklahoma going down the field 14 plays, they scored a touchdown, and then Nebraska had the 2 false start penalties before their first offensive snap. But after that, I think Nebraska handled that environment relatively well. Now, it didn't start great. The defense, I don't think that was so much the environment, just Oklahoma went down the field and scored. And the offense had that. They started out really bad because of the environment. And then as a team, though, they settled in and they played in it, and they sort of seemed to revel in it at times as the game went along. And that's something to me that I think it's good. I don't know that it's going to be the difference in winning and losing. Yeah. But I think especially because it's a night game at Michigan State, and because they hadn't played in front of a loud, hostile crowd in quite a while, going back to 2019. I think it's probably good to have experienced that and said, oh, shoot, yeah, we can't jump off sides, we can't false start.
Mhm.
And yes, we can handle this sort of environment and get that out of the way before you go to the woodshed on Saturday.
Yeah. When you started that little soliloquy, my thought was, I don't think it's going to help that much. But by the time you ended it, I was like, yeah, you know what? That game might actually help that team this week. I'm never totally convinced on those conversations, but I think you might have convinced me.
I'm curious to see the atmosphere Saturday night. I was just trading emails with Matt Charbonneau, who covers Michigan State for the Detroit News, and he thinks it's going to be a raucous atmosphere, a wild atmosphere.
Let's go.
It's not. I mean, that's not something you really think of with Michigan State football.
No.
Right? No. Like, maybe when Michigan comes in, or maybe when Ohio State comes in, or
that student section is always charged up, though. It's one of the best in the conference. The student section is for sure.
I feel like you're being a little facetious.
I'm not. No, I'm not. They fill up. They got a corner. They have like a corner wedge, and they're charged up all the time.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I just don't know. I'm sure it'll be good. I just don't know. Will it rise to the level of Oklahoma? Probably not, because it's just different. But yeah, like you guys said, it can't hurt Nebraska having played in that environment last week. They're not going to see anything at Michigan State or hear anything at Michigan State that they didn't hear at Oklahoma.
I'll tell you what's interesting to me, and I know I said it to you in the car, and we have the same conversations, but not in front of public like we're doing now. Michigan State outscored Miami 21-3 in the fourth quarter. They are rolling into their home state.
Rolling.
I mean, I've always felt that when I'm watching an NBA series, like a 7-game series, game 2, if a team has a good fourth quarter, it carries over. If a team has a bad fourth quarter, even if they're in a blowout, that can hurt them. So I think that rolling off a 21-3 fourth quarter advantage at Miami, I think they're coming in with a ton of momentum. Now Nebraska's got to wrestle that bowl down right away, I think. I mean, it can. Yeah. That's what it's like. You got to wrestle down. You got to take that bull by the horns and wrestle it down like you're in a rodeo, right?
Mel Tucker was talking earlier this week, and he said they have like their players wear like the GPS stuff, like most college teams do. They have it tracks how far you run and how fast you run and those sorts of things. And he said, according to that data, Michigan State was running faster in the fourth quarter than it was in the first quarter of that game.
Is that right?
Against Miami. Think about that. You know,
yeah. In the heat,
in the heat, in the humidity, against a good opponent. You know, it tells you, yeah, they just built as the game went on. They didn't limp out of there, like you said. They flew out of there, and now they're flying into their home stadium with a chance to make a statement. So, yeah, you're right, Sip. They're going to have to wrestle that bowl down right out of the gate, and it's going to be a matter of if they can do it or not. And if they do, they're going to have a really good chance to win that game. If not, it might be a rough night.
Wood chips are flying in the woodshed.
Yeah,
the chips are flying in the woodshed.
Speaking of bowls, Kenneth Walker III, 372 of his 493 yards have occurred after contact. So that's a bull.
Horse.
That's a bull.
He's a bull. He's a bull. He's a horse. Leads the nation in rushing yards per game. His rushing yards per game is, I think, 24 more per game than second place right now. He's got 70-some yards more than second place in total rushing yards per game. First carry of his career, he took 75 yards to the residents against Northwestern. It's a different. This isn't your daddy's Michigan State offense. They've scored on a 75-yard touchdown 2 of their 3 games so far.
On the first play. Yeah.
On the first play.
Kirk Cousins would take offense to that. Now this is interesting. This whole Walker thing is interesting to me because he wasn't even the starter at Wake Forest.
No, he wasn't. He was good though. He was good.
579 yards in back-to-back years. 579. He hit it on the nose back-to-back years, which is strange enough.
Yeah.
579. Yeah, he was good, but I don't know. He wasn't like this.
Let me throw a stat at you, Sipple. Against Northwestern, he had runs of 75, 50, and 30.
Hello.
In the last 2 games, his longest carry is 25. So I'm not saying he's not good. He's obviously good. But he had a ridiculous first game where he ripped off 3 huge runs, and then he's just been good. I mean, he's been really good since then, but he had 4 touchdowns week 1. He only played 2 quarters against Youngstown State because they blew him out. And then he was good, but in a much more workman-like way against Miami. I mean, he got to 170 yards, nothing to sneeze at. But he had to work harder for it against the Hurricanes for sure than he did against Northwestern.
I thought it was interesting.
Go ahead.
I was just saying. I thought it was interesting hearing Eric Chenander talk yesterday just about what the challenge in defending him. And he talked about he knows how to use your leverage against you. He knows how to cut off a defensive lineman and get into the crease and go. And I think it's going to be such an interesting challenge for Nebraska's defense, depending on how they line up. Just the structure of Nebraska's defense. I'm not going to climb into the weeds and claim I know anything special here, but sometimes Nebraska likes to play those outside linebackers kind of a little wider as pass rushers and get into the backfield. So I feel like it's going to be a big game for Nebraska's defensive linemen. They've got to set their leverage and set their marks, and the linebackers have to have the eye discipline to stay in the lanes they're supposed to stay in, or else he's gone down the field. And like what Parker said, defenses have kind of figured that out over the last couple of weeks. So we'll see if Nebraska can do it too. And this will probably be the best defense Michigan State has faced so far, if we're being honest. So going to be a real interesting matchup. If he has another big game, then Nebraska's in trouble.
Yeah. So against 2 Power 5 teams, Illinois and Oklahoma, Nebraska's given up an average of 180.5 rushing yards. How would you guys say that run defense is? I mean, it's nuanced a little bit, right? It's a nuanced conversation. What do you think of Nebraska's run defense, guys?
It is. It's new. I mean, they haven't been lights out. That's for sure. I mean, they've given up some yards. The thing about it is, at the end of the day, the defense. We're talking about the defense. Gave up 21 points against Illinois, 7 against Buffalo, and 21 against Oklahoma.
21.
So to me, 23. So to me, the 2 on the safety. Yeah, so 21. 22, 7, and 21. So that you should win games. Like if that's what you're doing, you should win games. So when push comes to shove, the reason why they've given up some yards on the ground, but they haven't got hurt too badly by it, is because they haven't given up the huge plays. Epstein, I think, got him for a 40-yarder, and Kevin Marks from Buffalo at one point got him for a 30 or 40-yarder.
30.
But they
yards.
Tackled and then didn't break after those hits. And they haven't let anybody go 60 to the house. They haven't let anybody go Kenneth Walker on the first play against Northwestern against him. So if you do that, if you tackle and you get the guy to the ground, even when he gets 10, 15, 20 yards, and you live to fight another day, they're good enough that they've been able to get off the field in some situations. So don't give up the home run, keep the teams between the 20s, and they've been living pretty good. Not true bend but don't break, but they've been living pretty good by that sort of production so far.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Baz, you covered something today, a hoops media event.
Before we get to that, do we want to do football predictions real quick?
Oh, my bad. Good job.
No,
way to keep it on
good.
the tracks, Baz.
Well, that's what I'm here. I'm the conductor, just keeping it pointing.
Let's do predictions.
Right now. Yeah. All right, I'll go first. I think Nebraska loses a close game again. I think I'm going to go final 23-22 Michigan State. I think the kicking game hurts Nebraska again. I think Kenneth Walker breaks off at least one long run. That's probably the difference in the game. So I know I proved to me that you can win one of those games. That's what it comes down to. They haven't proven it. So like I said, Nebraska could very well win this game, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did. But for now, they haven't proven they can do it. So until they prove it, I got to pick against them. So give me Michigan State in a tight one.
All right, let's go keep the youth movement going. Go ahead, Parker.
Yeah, ever since even after that game against Oklahoma, my brain says, similar to what Baz said, Michigan State close. I don't know how many times I've said this on this podcast over the last 4 years. I just want to see them win a close game, so on and so forth. For whatever reason, this is purely a hunch. I don't have a great rationale for it. I agree with everything Baz said. I think somehow, some way, Nebraska gets out of East Lansing with a win. And so against my probably better judgment, I'm picking Nebraska 23-21.
It's interesting. I have wrongfully characterized Michigan State's defensive front as kind of a typical Michigan State dominant defensive front. Today, Graham Couch told me that it's a plucky defensive front.
Plucky.
Plucky. I've never described the Sue Crick defensive front as plucky.
No.
And that's not probably what you want. They're not, he characterized them as good defensively, but not maybe typical Michigan State. I'm with Baz though on this. I just can't. I think Nebraska's pretty good. I think they're a pretty good team, but I don't know that I trust the offensive line. I think they're going to have to manage that hole as the season goes on, and maybe they can manage it Saturday night. But I'm with Baz. I got to prove it to me. Close. I think it's going to be close. I'm going to say 24-17 loss. Michigan State prevails 24-17, and then I don't know where it all goes from there.
Downhill.
I don't know where it all goes from there.
On to Northwestern.
Downhill to Memorial Stadium for a 64% capacity game, a non-sellout. The streak ends. And then
here's the thing. That's why I get back to why it's so big.
I know.
The conversation feels a little too heavy to me right now.
It's very heavy. There's a lot of weight.
It's weighty.
It's weighty.
They need to lighten it up, and this would do it for a while.
Yeah.
At least for
they're like Atlas.
Yeah, they're Atlas. They're more like Sisyphus.
They're more like Sisyphus.
I am
pushing that. You're like Atlas. You're like Atlas. Nebraska's like Sisyphus, pushing that boulder up the hill and then letting it roll back down on it.
Ow! Ouch!
There's your Greek literature history. Hoops. Photo day today over at Hendricks. I got to meet the fellas up close for the first time since school started, basically. Everybody present and accounted for. They look like a Division I. They look like a Big Ten team. Good size, good athleticism. Wilhelm Breidenbach has maybe the longest arms I've ever seen on a human being. He's got this huge bushy beard and he wears goggles. Like he's going to be the guy that Nebraska opponents hate, I think, for the next couple of years.
Is he like Rambus?
He's like Rambus a little bit. Maybe not quite the a-hole Rambus is, but
Rambus is an ass.
He is an ass. I would not characterize Wilhelm Breidenbach as an ass.
I have a Rambus story. I'm not going to tell it now. You got to keep going, but
okay.
Go ahead.
All right.
More on the Huskers.
More on the Huskers. They start practice September 28th, so this coming Monday. Start fall practice. I think they like what they have. Just talking to guys around the program today and people around the program, they like how the schedule kind of sets up for them early in the year. They like that game against Auburn early in the year down in Atlanta. I really think they like what they have. And I know some of that can be lip service in the preseason, so we'll see what it ends up looking like. But there's a chance for this team to start strongly in the non-conference. I could see 8 or 9 wins in the non-conference if what they're saying is real. And so, yeah, it's going to be fascinating. The guys today talked about Kisi Tominaga, the Japanese player that's come in. They say he's really good. Like he's legitimate. Can really shoot it, can do some other things. Obviously, Bryce McGowan's is going to be great for him. Trey McGowan's, Alonzo Verge. You can go down the list and name something every guy that they like. And we'll hear more from Fred Hoiberg on Monday. Actually, he's going to speak before John Cook up in Memorial Stadium on Monday. So we'll learn more then. Cool. Yeah, I think they like what they have, and it's kind of the point now. We're still 50, well, not quite 50 days from the first games. A little more than a month from the exhibition game against Colorado on Halloween. So we'll see. We'll see what it looks like. But I think they feel really good about where they're at right now.
Baz, that's good. Okay, so I'm trying to think if I have any questions. No injuries, and you think it's Casey Tominaga? Is that how you pronounce it?
Kisi Tominaga. Yep.
Kisi Tominaga. You think he could be a factor as a shooter?
I think he's real. I'm not saying he's going to start. He's going to help him for sure.
All right. And what do you expect from? Come on, let's get down to it. They have a 5-star recruit over there.
Yeah.
Why are we not talking about it? I mean, is he what do you expect from him? Gowans, Bryce.
He looks the part. I think he'll start this year. I think he's just got such a unique skill set. He's the kind of player Nebraska hasn't had a long time, and you can see it in the way he moves, in the way he carries himself, in the way he acts. I went over and watched a practice this summer, a practice in July is different than now or whatever, but you can just see it. Like he's very naturally gifted. He's really, really good, and I think he's going to play a lot. If he doesn't start, he's going to play a lot. And
he can really. I've heard Doc say he can really shoot it. I mean,
they love him.
Freaky shooter.
Freaky shooter, and they need that. Let's be honest, they need guys that can shoot. And if their best shooter also happens to be a 5-star guy, that's pretty good too. So I expect a lot out of him. I think Nebraska does too. I think he has a chance to kind of flourish in the way they're going to play. It sounds like they're going to play a little faster this year. They're taking better care of the ball, so you might see the tempo get pushed a little more with Fred's system, the pace and space system. So it's. Like I say, it's so hard because we just haven't seen much of him yet, on the court. But Bryce McGowan's going to be a special one, I think.
Is he a riser like his brother?
Yes, he is. He's maybe not quite like the freak show athlete that Trey is, because Trey's the best athlete on the team. I don't think there's any
holy God, can he rise? Oh boy!
But Bryce is no slouch. He can get up there too. He can
some of those
traffic. Yeah, so that's the thing. They've got athletes that they haven't had for quite a while, and I think they've got a few more shooters to put around them, and have decent size inside with Ed Andre and Derek Walker and Oleg Kuyenets who can fill in a pinch at 7 feet tall. So they've got the pieces, and I know we've said that before. And look, they've won 14 games total the last 2 years, so who knows what it's going to look like, but. It looks different. It looks different than it has to me the first couple of years under Fred. So we'll just have to, once we see him on the court, we won't really know until we see him on the court.
Get to the NIT.
Look,
NIT or bust, baby.
Here's the thing. If they finish top 10 in the Big Ten, which is not at all out of the question, they're pushing for an NCAA bid. Just based on the history of that conference. I think 9 teams got in last year, 8 or 9. They can be in that discussion, and they're going to have to play well, and the league's going to be a bear. But they can be in that discussion for an NCAA bid. And if you're doing that, then of course you're in the discussion for an NIT bid, and you go from there and you see how you grow. But I think this team has a chance to do something this year and kind of take a pretty big step.
I think so too. All right, that was good. We went pretty long there.
That was good.
Is there anything else? Guys. Can Parker do one more imitation of a blender?
It's really good.
He did. I did that to him when we were getting ready to shoot our videos on the field on Monday, and he looked at me and he's like, "You do a pretty good blender."
That's really good. That's really good.
For those that don't know, Parker's an incredible impressionist, and he does a lot. He does a lot of different voices with a lot of different characters. We're not going to share them all here.
Baz, you know what we haven't heard though? We haven't heard one of you. We haven't heard one of you, and we haven't heard one of me. He
saves those for his lovely wife, who, when he complains about his coworkers after he gets done with his little bit.
I'd love to hear a Baz imitation. Oh my God, that would be funny.
I don't have a Baz.
Baz is tough to do.
And my Sipple doesn't stack up. There's some people that do a pretty good Sipple. I don't know if mine's particularly good.
I'd like to hear a Baz.
Just stutter a lot and kind of spit when you talk, and you'll have me down pretty good.
No, don't do it, Parker.
Don't do it.
Save it for when you're ready.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week for the next biggest game in Scott Frost's tenure at Nebraska when they play Northwestern.
Stop it. I'm writing a column about
it. Stop.
And I'm going to have a blueberry muffin right now, so I'll see you later.
All right. See you guys later. We'll talk to you next week.